The biggest fish in this trade period is Carlton superstar Charlie Curnow. Zeets, it feels like Sydney is the most likely landing spot for him.
Yeah, well, Carlton are saying that not for poaching, but obviously he's someone that everyone is looking at with keen eyes. Sydney in particular, I think Andrew Mackie at Geelong have acknowledged it's going to be tough to get Rowan Marshall and Charlie Curnow in. So Sydney's list boss Chris Keane today was adamant. He was adamant that he thinks they can get this deal done, or at least put forward a package without players like Will Hayward or James Rowbottom that could still satisfy the Blues and potentially turn their eye and turn their head. So it's going to be a really interesting one to watch, obviously. But again, Hayward and Rowbottom, he said today, they're not being traded. They're happy at Sydney. They're contracted. They're staying with us. So 2 first-round picks, for example, you'd think that'd have to be the starting point for someone like Charlie Curnow. So it's pick 10 this year, that will get bumped back, and a future first as well, which you would imagine maybe pick 14 or 15 next year, depending on how they go. You'd think they'd finish relatively high with Charlie Curnow on their list. Is that enough for the Blues, given how adamant they've been he's not for trade? Yeah,
it's not far off. Pick 11 and a pick in the teens next year if they do choose to trade their future one as well. It's not too far off the mark. I think Carlton would probably like a player as well, and I think Sydney do have options that they could look. I mean, Ollie Florence being floated a lot. There's the Will Hayward discussion. There are potentially some other names as well. I think it's on Sydney to get this deal done. I think they desperately need Charlie Curnow to be a premiership threat in the next couple of seasons. That'll certainly boost their stocks, and I think they'll find a way to get this done. And probably still will, I think, include a player. But the 2 first-round picks for me is not far off.
Yeah, I think the Swans would be happy to incorporate Florent in this deal, who can kick the ball nicely, can finish on the outside, has some decent wheels. Didn't play his best footy this season, to be fair. Played a bit in the VFL. But Carlton aren't doing a lot of talking on Curnow's future. I think Graham Wright and co are sitting on their hands. I think this is going to be a real deadline sort of a deal. But, you know, strategically, I don't think the Blues really have a reason to show their hand too early. The emphasis and onus is on Sydney to come with an exciting package. Now, this man at his best, Joey, he can still be an 80-goal a season forward. He can still be, what, a top 5 player in the competition?
Well, years 2022, 23, 24, he kicked over 200 goals in those 3 seasons. I mean, this guy is a star. The numbers are there. And as I said, it elevates the Sydney Swans, who missed the 8 this year, into premiership calculations with everyone fit and healthy. And then it allows guys like Amadi and McLean to become second and third options, which they really should be in many forward lines. So, as I said, I agree with you. I think Sydney just have to find a way to get this done. Carlton can sit back and wait and say, give us your best offer, and leave it as late as possible to make sure the Swans stump up.
Yeah, it feels like this is definitely clearly going into next week, but it seems like this year, instead of the chocolates of draft picks, they're boiled lollies this year, draft picks. Recruiters don't want draft picks this year. So even though Sydney might stump up 2 first-rounders that in most years sounds pretty good, I don't think that's getting it done. So to open the door and get a potential package through, you're probably going to have to put a player on the table, and that's where things fall down.
And generally what will happen, it'll involve a third club. This generally doesn't just work with two clubs. There'll be third clubs involved and a mix. So Carlton still might get a player. It might not just be from the Sydney Swans. It might be from another club.
Well, Chris Keane did bring that up as well. Maybe we have to get a third club involved, a player as well, to try and facilitate a 3-way deal that gets Charlie Curnow to the Swans. I don't know what price is too high to pay for someone of that calibre, as you just mentioned, the amount of goals he's kicked in recent seasons.
Just not sure how much Carlton are keen on that future first, Joey. If Sydney bounce back into the 8, into the high part of the 8, that's going to be a late pick.
It will appeal though, because Carlton will need points for potentially the #1 pick in Cody Walker. So with the rule changes where you can only use 2 draft picks and a lot of points, they're probably going to need another future first-round pick to be able to acquire enough points, depending on where they finish themselves, if Cody Walker is a top 2, top 3 draft pick.
One of the most fascinating players in this year's trade period, of course, has been someone we've talked about a lot this year, which is the #1 pick, Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. Hasn't played at all this season at the kennel amid some personal issues, but there has been a development on this front today, because Gold Coast will be able to pick Jamarra Ugle-Hagan up, guys, on a significantly reduced deal. We know that Jamarra is on $800,000 or thereabouts at the kennel, but that contract is almost certainly going to be ripped up, torn up, and there will be a fresh one at Gold Coast. So, and that could be potentially half, maybe even less than half. So Gold Coast, while they're circling Christian Petrarca, will have to pay the bulk of his $1.3 million deal. They could get Jamarra Ugle-Hagan for peanuts on $300,000, $400,000, which, let's be honest, this is a bit of a throw at the stumps. He's had a difficult year, but we know he's an absolute superstar talent. But they're not paying big money for Jamarra. This is going to be as cheap as chips deal. And when you consider that it's going to be probably wound up in the Connor Butterick deal, for maybe $300,000 or $400,000, heavily games incentivised, Is it a worthy addition? Are you convinced on this? Guys, what do you think?
I think it's certainly worth a crack. Damien Hardwick's been big on this the whole way through, we've heard, and obviously Craig Cameron mentioned at the trade period launch that if we are to do this deal, we are giving Jamarra a second chance. The onus is on him to take it. It has to be up to him. He has to decide. So they're certainly putting the onus on Jamarra Ugle-Hagan to turn his life around and to get back to good form. If he's right, Joey, I mean, this could be a great pickup if he's right. It's a big if.
Yeah, it does make it easier to justify the risk. I said last night, I think it's really interesting that it's the Gold Coast Suns that are taking this gamble. From where they have come from to where they are now, the culture they've built, the list that they've got, I don't necessarily think they need Jamarra. Of course, no doubt, as we said, he's best. He's absolutely worth it. But it is still a big gamble for the Gold Coast Suns that have done a lot right in recent years. But obviously, they're looking at the glass half full and getting the very best out of him.
Yeah, take us through it, Jay. How does it work? So he's on 800 now.
Yep.
How is this? Is Gold Coast saying you can just forget that? Is this him saying, I so desperately want another chance, I'll forget it?
I think if he stays at the Kennel, his career's over. I think there's not a future for him there. But if he goes to the Gold Coast, this is a chance. I mean, he's 23, Jamarra. He can play another 10 years of football. So whilst this next year will be a much cheaper deal, this gives him a chance to extend his career and have a decent AFL career for the next decade. I just wonder, Joey, to yours point, why Gold Coast going for this? Are they looking forward and thinking, well, Ben King's out of contract next year. Jed Walter's going to be in demand. Are they sort of thinking, well, if we lose one of them, potentially this is a long-term play because everyone's going to come for King and particularly Walter if they can't sign them to extensions.
You almost think there's a bit of insurance here that just in case the talks about Ben King coming back to Melbourne and clubs really pursuing him, that they have another replacement for him.
From that perspective, I understand the sort of logic, particularly if it comes cheap as chips. But is this the penny dropping moment for Jamarra Ugle-Hagan? Because he knows he's only going to get paid some decent cash if he plays, if he prepares, if he's professional. So this is a big summer for Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. I think he's talked a big game. I think we need to see genuine professionalism and preparation for him.
It's a good way for them to do the deal. It's going to be on him, as everyone knows, and we know his football talent. This is not about an on-field issue for Jamarra. This is about him off-field, and can he get himself sorted, his life back on track, and the professional standards to become an important player for the Suns.
From the Bulldogs' perspective, $800,000 saving, and from a club circling Zach Butters in 12 months' time, that's pennies they're stashing under the mattress for a player at Butters.